The road stretched dark and empty, the neon lights of Fenton flickering in the distance. Marcus readjusted his grip on the steering wheel, his jaw tight. The rain had started again, tapping against the windshield in a steady rhythm. The kind of night where things went wrong. He had been in this town for too long. Fenton wasn't a place you stuck around unless you had a reason. And Marcus had one. Rick Coleman. The name alone made his muscles tense. A cop gone dirty, Coleman had run this town's underbelly for years, untouchable behind a badge. Drugs, weapons, people, it all moved through him. Until now. Marcus had spent the last 6 months collecting everything he needed to put Coleman away. The kind of evidence that didn't just end careers, it ended lives. Now, it was time to finish it. The warehouse on the outskirts of town was silent when Marcus pulled up. He killed the engine, stepping out into the cold night. His fingers brushed against the gun holstered at his side as he moved toward the entrance. Inside, the air smelled of oil and damp wood. Stacks of crates lined the walls, the dim glow of a single hanging light casting long shadows. Then, movement. Marcus barely had time to react before a figure stepped out from the darkness. Jenna Calloway. She crossed her arms, giving him a look. "You shouldn't be here." Marcus exhaled. "Neither should you." Jenna had been one of the few clean cops left in Fenton, until she got too close. Now, she was just another problem Coleman needed to get rid of. She glanced toward the crates. "You really think this is enough to take him down?" Marcus nodded. "It's more than enough." A noise outside. Jenna's hand went to her hip. "We have company." Marcus moved fast, ducking behind a stack of crates just as the doors burst open. Coleman's men flooded in, guns drawn. Bullets ripped through the wood, splinters flying. Marcus fired back, dropping 2 before ducking behind cover. Jenna took out another, her jaw set. Then, a deep voice rang out. "That's enough." Rick Coleman stepped into the warehouse, his presence enough to make the remaining men lower their weapons. Marcus stood, gun still aimed. "It's over, Coleman." Coleman chuckled. "You really think so?" Jenna tossed something toward him. A flash drive. Coleman caught it, eyes narrowing. "What's this?" "Everything," Jenna said. "Your deals. Your payments. Your murders. The second you kill us, it goes public." Coleman's jaw tightened. He exhaled sharply, slipping the drive into his pocket. Then, he nodded at his men. "Stand down." Marcus lowered his gun slightly, watching as Coleman turned to leave. "This isn't over," Coleman said without looking back. Jenna glanced at Marcus. "That went better than expected." Marcus wasn't so sure. The next few days in Fenton were too quiet. Marcus knew what that meant. When people like Rick Coleman went down, they didn't go down alone. There were always loose ends, people with too much to lose. And now, Marcus was at the top of their list. Jenna knew it, too. She found him later that night, sitting in his car outside an old diner. "You don't have long," she said, slipping into the passenger seat. Marcus took a sip of his coffee. "Figured." Jenna exhaled. "Some of the guys upstairs, they're not happy. They think you're a problem." Marcus smirked. "Good." Jenna frowned. "I'm serious. They're planning something." Marcus turned to her. "Then we hit first." That night, Marcus made a call. A secure line. A voice answered. "Talk to me." "Time's up," Marcus said. "They're on to me." A pause. Then, understood. Extraction in 48 hours. Not soon enough. The next night, Marcus found Charlie Vega, a bar owner with connections to Coleman. If anyone knew what was coming, it was him. Vega was in the back of the Blue Ridge, sipping whiskey. "I don't know you," Vega said. Marcus slid into the booth. "You do now." Vega frowned. "You must be lost." Marcus leaned in. "Coleman's done." "Who's pulling the strings now?" Vega hesitated. Then, he sighed. "They call him the judge." Marcus frowned. "Never heard of him." Vega gave a dry laugh. "That's the point." He slid a slip of paper across the table. "An address." Marcus took it. "Appreciate it." Vega downed the rest of his drink. "If you're smart, you'll leave town before the sun comes up." Marcus smirked. "Not my style." The address led him to an abandoned warehouse. It was past midnight when Marcus arrived. The building was dark, except for a faint light flickering inside. Gun drawn, he moved inside. A shadow shifted. Marcus spun, too late. Pain exploded in the back of his skull. Then, darkness. When Marcus came to, he was tied to a chair. His head throbbed. And standing in front of him, Rick Coleman. "You're supposed to be in a cell," Marcus muttered. Coleman smirked. "You really thought I'd go down that easy?" Marcus exhaled. "Figured it was worth a shot." Coleman circled him. "You don't know when to walk away." Marcus smirked, blood dripping from his temple. "Funny. I was just about to say the same thing about you." Coleman pulled a gun, pressing it against Marcus's forehead. "This town doesn't belong to you," Coleman said. Marcus didn't flinch. "Doesn't belong to you either." Coleman cocked the hammer. "Last words?" Then, a gunshot. Coleman's body jerked. His eyes widened in shock. Then, he collapsed. Marcus turned his head. Jenna stood in the doorway, gun smoking in her hands. She exhaled. "Took you long enough." Marcus grinned. "Had it under control." Jenna rolled her eyes, rushing over to untie him. "Let's go before his friends show up." Marcus nodded. "Once we leave, there's no going back." Jenna met his gaze. "I was never staying anyway." By sunrise, Fenton's darkest secret was exposed. The arms ring dismantled. The judge? Disappeared. Marcus was gone before the town woke up. Jenna left soon after. Fenton went back to being quiet. Too quiet. But something had changed. And the town would never be the same again.